The highly anticipated finale of the classic American TV show Better Call Saul is finally here. Don't miss it! This episode not only features many important characters but also marks the most significant moment of the entire series, with the arrest of the main character, Saul. The decade-long Breaking Bad universe series has finally come to a satisfying conclusion. Picking up from the last episode, Saul hears the alarm and starts running frantically. Marion provides the police with crucial information about the vehicle. Back at home, Saul hastily gathers his valuables and grabs a disposable phone. To Saul's surprise, the police arrive much faster than he expected. Helpless, he escapes through the back window. However, he doesn't get far before he hears the sound of a helicopter overhead. It seems the police are taking the hunt for Saul very seriously. To avoid being spotted, Saul sprints towards the underground tunnel, barely escaping. Just when he thought he'd got away with it, he didn't realize that the next corner was full of police. So he rushed back, but before he can take more than a few steps, he sees a police car parked ahead. In a panic, Saul hides in a nearby trash bin. This is the second time he has hidden in a trash bin. The first time was years ago when he was searching for evidence in the Sandpiper Crossing case. He opens his little treasure box, which contains the contact information of a getaway company and some diamonds. This scene was shown the last time Saul planned to run away. Displaying his portable valuable assets, he takes out the disposable phone to contact Ed, but accidentally knocks over the box of diamonds while unpacking it. Now he has his work cut out for him, searching for tiny diamonds in a heap of trash, all in the dark. But before Saul could find a few diamonds, his worst fears were realized.
Hands! Now!
Saul stands up from the trash bin, hands raised in surrender. In the next scene, Saul is brought to the police station. The Omaha police watch Saul's advertisements. Amazed that there was such a talent in Albuquerque, Saul was given the right to make one phone call. With no family to call, Saul first contacts his colleagues to ask them to request a long leave from his boss. In the cell, Saul can't believe this is real. He feels like he's dreaming. Feeling pain reminds him he's not dreaming. Just as he is in despair, Saul suddenly notices someone has carved "My lawyer will ream your ass" on the cell wall. It must be said that Saul's mind isn't as sharp as it used to be. He nearly forgot his old profession. Even criminals have the right to an attorney. So he quickly gets up, knocks on the door, and requests to make another phone call. The scene shifts to Albuquerque, where Bill receives a call from Saul.
William Oakley & Associates. Trust experience. Trust Oakley. Bill Oakley speaking.
Trust experience, trust Oakley. I like that. It's catchy. You know who this is, right?
As a lawyer, Bill is not allowed to conceal a call from a fugitive, but Saul assures him that he is already at the police station and there's no need to worry. Hearing that Saul has been arrested, Bill knows why Saul is calling him, but he doesn't want to take Saul's case because the prosecutor has a warehouse full of evidence against Saul. No lawyer could help him. However, Saul doesn't see it that way. He believes he will succeed, and this is Bill's chance to make a name for himself. Seeing Saul's confidence, Bill decides to trust him. On the way to the court hearing, Saul sees Marie, the widow of DEA Captain Hank, and Walter's sister-in-law from Breaking Bad. Those who haven't watched Breaking Bad should definitely watch it before Better Call Saul, as many plots are closely related. At the trial, the prosecutor announces dozens of charges against Saul, enough to imprison him for several lifetimes. Despite the prosecutor sentencing Saul to 30 years, he remains indifferent. He signals Marie to come in for a chat. Although Bill feels it's inappropriate, Saul insists, seemingly having a plan in mind. Marie enters, and everyone stands up to give her a seat. Seeing the accomplice responsible for her husband's death right in front of her, Marie controls her anger and accuses Saul of being capable of doing anything for money. She declares that such a person should be imprisoned forever and never be allowed to rise again. After Marie vents, Saul begins his performance. He admits Hank was a brave man, whom he admired, and expresses deep sorrow for Hank's sacrifice and Marie's plight. Saul also claims he is a victim. He recounts his first encounter with Walter. Walter, in order to save his captured subordinates, forced Saul to perjure himself. As a lawyer, Saul initially refused, adhering to his professional ethics. As a result, he was kidnapped by Walter and Jesse, taken to the desert with a grave dug, and had a gun pointed at his head. To save his life, he agreed to work for Walter. Later, it proved to be the right decision, as anyone who opposed Walter was killed. The best example is the simultaneous killing of 10 informants in 3 prisons within 2 minutes. Saul said he wasn't running from the police. but from people who wanted him dead. Although Walter is dead, his accomplice Jesse is still at large. Saul paints himself as a very pitiable figure, leaving Bill stunned at his storytelling skills. Prosecutor George believes the jury won't buy Saul's story, but Saul starts to threaten, noting that he's heard of George's winning streak, and trusting the jury now would be a gamble. This is Saul's leverage. He wants to negotiate for better terms. Hearing this, George's confidence wavers. Marie reminds him not to compromise with a criminal like Saul, but in the end, Marie leaves disappointed. After lengthy negotiations, Saul manages to secure only a 7.5-year sentence. Not only that, but Saul, knowing he has leverage, made a series of demands. He insisted on choosing his own prison because he knows which one is the most comfortable in the entire country. To maintain his winning streak, George reluctantly agrees to Saul's demands, but that's not enough. Saul further demands that the prison provide him with his favorite flavor of ice cream every week. Hearing this, Bill can't stand it anymore and tells George that Saul is joking. Under Saul's insistence, George agrees to the last request and prepares to leave. At that moment, Saul also revealed that he had an even bigger secret, one that had never been disclosed before. The prosecutor tells him to spill it. Saul's bargaining chip is Howard's murder case, which the prosecutors are already aware of. After Saul's last phone call with Kim chose to redeem herself. She went to Albuquerque to confess to the prosecutors about Howard's case and personally informed Howard's wife, Cheryl. Even though Cheryl would probably take her to court, Kim didn't care. After all, it was too depressing to live with a human life on her back all day.
He thought he really had something.
Sounds like you and your ex aren't talking on a regular basis.
Kim Wexler walked into the Albuquerque DA's office last month. She spilled her guts about Howard Hamlin. On the record.
You got nothing left to sell. Last chance. Do we go to trial or do we have a deal?
Yes, we have a deal.
Let's get this in writing. Not a word changes.
On the plane back to Albuquerque, Saul asks Bill what the DA is going to do with Kim, who confessed. Bill says that due to insufficient evidence, the prosecutors might put the case aside. Hearing this, Saul feels relieved. Although he has parted ways with Kim, he still cares about her situation. However, Bill points out that Kim's trouble doesn't lie with the district attorney but with Howard's widow, Cheryl. From what he knows, Cheryl is preparing to hire a lawyer to sue Kim. Hearing this, Saul reveals that he has more undisclosed secrets about the matter and that he will testify in court as soon as he gets off the plane. Bill thinks this might be detrimental to Kim.
You give the government more, maybe they bring the hammer down. What more are you gonna get? What's left?
You don't understand. It's really good ice cream.
Albuquerque's district attorney, Suzanne, learns that Saul is going to testify about Howard's case. After careful consideration, she immediately calls Kim, as this could reopen the case. Kim, upon hearing this, becomes a bit flustered. She decides to attend the hearing. Saul, dressed in a luxurious suit, walked into the courtroom with a calm and confident demeanor, clearly ready for what was to come. Saul requests to defend himself in court. He starts again with the story of Walter and Jesse kidnapping him, but this time his narrative is different. Saul admits that he was initially terrified but soon realized it was a money-making opportunity. Hearing this, Bill is shocked and requests a recess, which is denied. George, seeing the advantage for their side, asks Saul to continue. Bill requests to withdraw from the case but is again denied. Poor Bill just became cannon fodder for Saul's redemption.
I lied to the government about Kim Wexler. I fed him a load of BS about her involvement in Howard Hamlin's murder. I just wanted her to come here today. I wanted her to hear this. I didn't witness any of the murders, but I damn well knew it was happening. I was more than a willing participant. I was indispensable. I kept Walter White out of jail. I laundered his money, I lied for him, I conspired with him, and I made millions. And Agent Schrader and Agent Gomez and a whole lot of other people would still be alive. Fact is, Walter White couldn't have done it without me. You got that?
Bill hurriedly applies to have Saul's testimony struck from the record, arguing that it's speculative. George insists Saul continue because the information is unfavorable to Saul. After a heated debate, Judge Samantha allows Saul to proceed.
What happened to Howard Hamlin? It was, I can't even. After that, Kim had the guts to start over. She left town, but I'm the one who ran away.
This time, Jimmy finally tells the truth and reveals the deepest secret he had been hiding.
Charles McGill. You may have known him. He was an incredible lawyer. As the most brilliant guy I ever met, but he was limited. Instead, when I saw a chance to hurt him, I took it. I got his malpractice insurance canceled. I took away the one thing he lived for, the law. After that, he killed himself.
Remember Kim's shocked expression when Jimmy blamed Chuck's death on Howard? Now, Kim learns the truth. This is the Jimmy she had hoped to see, not the one who always chose to run away. The session continues with discussions between the judge and the lawyers. Jimmy, who has explained everything, makes eye contact with Kim. The Jimmy that Kim hoped to see has finally returned, and at this moment, she feels genuinely happy for him, just as she was happy for Jimmy when he first got his law license. In the series finale, the director includes 3 flashback scenes. The first is when Jimmy and Mike were escaping through the wilderness with $7 million. They were lucky to find a large water tank. Jimmy, parched and near dehydration, dives headfirst into it. Mike, experienced in survival, warns him not to drink so much at once, or he'll feel sick later. Jimmy hurriedly dumps out his homemade iced tea to fill his bottle with the precious water. The two rest by the tank to regain their strength. Jimmy is always the one who likes to break the silence. He turns to Mike and says, "We're sitting on $7 million here. How about we split it in half and run?" But Mike, always principled, is unmoved. He knows the consequences better than Jimmy. At this point, Jimmy starts to fantasize. He wants to spend $6 million to build a time machine and travel back to the past. He asks Mike what he would most like to do. Mike thinks Jimmy is talking nonsense and being unrealistic, but then Mike decides that since it's all hypothetical anyway, he might as well indulge Jimmy and discuss it. Mike says he'd want to go back to December 8, 2001, the day his son was murdered. Quickly, he changes his mind and says he'd go back to March 7, 1984, the day he first took a bribe as a cop. This was the first step on his path of no return, and the root cause of his son's murder. Mike also wishes he could travel 5 to 10 years into the future to see if his family is living well. Then he asks Jimmy. However, Jimmy's answer is very simple. He wants to travel back in time to buy stock in the companies that have seen the greatest increases in value, so he can become a billionaire. Mike thinks Jimmy is too focused on money and asks if there isn't anything else he'd want to change that's not related to money. Of course, Jimmy has regrets and things he wishes to change, like betraying his brother, but he doesn't say this aloud and chooses to avoid the issue instead. The second flashback is just before Jimmy runs away. When he's with Walter, he asks Walter the same question about time travel, but Walter dismisses the question as unrealistic, saying it violates the second law of thermodynamics. Hearing this, Saul counters Walter with a TV show he watched about quantum mechanics, insisting Walter answer what he would do if he had a time machine. Walter seems to understand Saul's point. Reflecting on his life, Walter acknowledges many regrets, but the one he regrets the most is walking away from Gray Matter, the company he co-founded. If he hadn't foolishly left, he wouldn't be in this mess now. Learning about Walter's experience, Saul's professional instincts kick in, and he scolds Walter for not mentioning it sooner, feeling he missed out on a good case. However, Walter's next words leave Saul feeling awkward.
You'd have been the last lawyer I'd have gone to.
Yeah, sure.
Walter says it's Saul's turn to share his regrets. Saul hesitates for a long time without speaking, and Walter doesn't press him. When Walter was about to leave, Saul casually said one thing, that is, when he was 22 years old, he faked a fall and touched the porcelain and ended up hurting his knee, which also led to Saul's current disease. This explains why Saul often mentions his bad knees when kneeling.
So you were always like this?
Walter succinctly points out Saul's fundamental problem. The third flashback shows Jimmy taking meticulous care of Chuck when he first developed electromagnetic hypersensitivity. Chuck sees and feels the brotherly love in Jimmy's care. Knowing Jimmy's character well, Chuck believes the legal profession isn't suitable for Jimmy. Chuck wants to guide Jimmy into a different career, but Jimmy always avoids the topic. By the end, we understand that Chuck was always Jimmy's guiding light, but Jimmy never took his brother's advice seriously. When they first had a falling out, Chuck said that Jimmy practicing law was like a chimp with a machine gun. After becoming Saul, Jimmy indeed acted exactly as his brother had predicted. Fortunately, under Kim's influence, Saul ultimately faces reality bravely and stops running away. This quality of courageously facing reality is the most admirable trait in everyone, just like Walter eventually admitted that his pursuit of art was entirely to satisfy his own selfish desires. The earlier a person can confront their own issues, the more they can avoid tragedy. Jimmy recovered his former self and buried the false personalities of Saul and Jean. On the way to prison, a fellow inmate recognizes Saul, but he insists that he is Jimmy McGill. Because of Saul's notoriety, everyone in the criminal world knows of him.
See? Told you. It's better call Saul.
All right. Better call Saul. Yeah. Better call Saul.
Daddy, shut up! Call Saul!
I said, shut up!
Call Saul!
Shut the hell up!
Call Saul! Shut it! Call Saul! Call Saul!
In prison, Jimmy's experience in baking lands him a job in the kitchen making bread. One day, a guard tells Jimmy that a lawyer has come to see him, and to his surprise, it's Kim. Jimmy is astonished that Kim is practicing law again. Kim explains that her law license never had an expiration date. She checks the surroundings to ensure they're alone, then pulls out a cigarette and lights it for Jimmy. They share the cigarette just like they used to in the HHM parking garage, signaling a return to their old rapport. From their conversation, we learn that Jimmy could have accepted the 7-year plea deal he negotiated but chose an 86-year sentence instead, demonstrating his commitment to redemption. However, with good behavior, he might get a reduced sentence. Kim smiles knowingly, believing that Jimmy will indeed have his sentence reduced. Seeing this familiar scene again feels as if our lives have come full circle, returning to where we started. True growth is not about relentlessly pursuing one's desires but about doing anything for the people you love and those who love you. As Kim leaves, Jimmy goes to the yard to say goodbye. Although the prison bars separate them into different worlds, nothing can break their emotional bond. In the end, Jimmy didn't let Kim down. His confession is not only a redemption for himself but also the best response he could give to Kim. Although Better Call Saul has ended, its value to the audience will undoubtedly continue. We also hope that the creators can produce more masterpieces because Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul were truly outstanding and captivating.